Grayson Hawk stood on the bridge of his trusty starship, the Celestial Nomad, his weathered hands resting lightly on the controls. The vast expanse of space stretched out before him, an endless sea of stars and possibilities. At 62 years old, with a lifetime of interstellar adventures behind him, Grayson was finally ready to hang up his captain's hat and retire to a quiet life on some peaceful, out-of-the-way moon. He ran a hand through his thick silver hair, which still maintained a hint of the chestnut brown of his youth. His rugged face, etched with lines of laughter and experience, reflected in the cockpit's viewport. Grayson had been a spacer for as long as he could remember, ever since he'd stowed away on a freighter at the age of 15 to escape the crushing poverty of his homeworld. In the decades since, he'd seen and done things most people could only dream of. He'd traded with exotic alien races, explored uncharted star systems, and even fought in a few interstellar skirmishes. The Celestial Nomad had been his faithful companion through it all, a sturdy little ship he'd won in a high-stakes game of Chronic years ago. But now Grayson was tired. The thrill of adventure had given way to a bone-deep weariness, and the solitude of space felt more lonely than liberating. He longed for solid ground beneath his feet, for the simple pleasures of a garden to tend and a porch to sit on as he watched the sun rise and set. He'd saved up a tidy sum over the years, enough to buy a cozy little homestead on Verdant Vista, a lush agricultural moon known for its stunning scenery and laid-back lifestyle. Just a few more days of travel, and he'd be there. Grayson could almost taste the fresh, crisp air and feel the warm sunlight on his face. Lost in thoughts of his impending retirement, Grayson almost didn't notice the blinking light on his console. He frowned, leaning in for a closer look. It was a distress signal, emanating from a small, uncharted island about a half-day's journey off his current course. Grayson hesitated, torn between his desire to start his new life and his spacer's instinct to never ignore a call for help. In the end, his conscience won out. With a sigh, he altered course and set off toward the mysterious island. As the Celestial Nomad approached the coordinates, Grayson's frown deepened. His scanners were picking up some strange readings. The island was too regular in shape to be natural, and it was emitting energy signatures consistent with advanced technology. But this area of space was supposed to be uninhabited, with no known settlements or outposts. Grayson's gut told him something wasn't right, but he'd come too far to turn back now. He guided his ship into the island's small docking bay, noting with unease the sleek, predatory lines of the other vessels parked there. They looked like high-end pleasure yachts, the kind favored by the galaxy's ultra-wealthy elite. The docking bay was eerily quiet as Grayson disembarked, the only sound the soft hum of the Celestial Nomad's engines powering down. He kept one hand on the plasma pistol at his hip as he cautiously made his way into the station's interior, senses on high alert. The corridors were dimly lit and opulently appointed, with plush carpets and expensive artwork lining the walls. But there was something soulless about the place, a sense of emptiness and despair that sent a chill down Grayson's spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stumbled into something far more sinister than a simple distress call. As he rounded a corner, Grayson heard a soft, muffled sound coming from behind a set of ornate double doors. It sounded like crying. His heart pounding, he pushed open the doors and stepped inside. The room was a grand hall with soaring ceilings and glittering chandeliers. But Grayson barely registered the opulent decor. His attention was immediately drawn to the dozens of young women huddled in the center of the room, their faces etched with fear and despair. They were all strikingly beautiful, with delicate features and slender builds. But they were clearly not human. Some had skin that shimmered like polished metal. Others had eyes that glowed like stars. A few even had wings or tails, marking them as members of exotic alien races Grayson had never encountered before. Two girls in particular caught Grayson's eye. They were huddled together, clinging to each other like lifelines in a storm. They had long, flowing hair that shone like spun silver, eyes that glimmered like amber gems, and skin that seemed to emit a soft, ethereal blue glow. They were breathtaking, like something out of a fairy tale. But their beauty was marred by the shackles around their wrists and the collars around their necks. With a sinking feeling in his gut, Grayson realized the truth. This was no ordinary space station, but a slave trading post. These poor girls were the merchandise, destined to be sold to the highest bidder and subjected to a life of servitude and abuse. Grayson's hand tightened on his pistol, his jaw clenching with barely contained rage. He may have been an old spacer, but he still had a sense of right and wrong. And this was about as wrong as it got. Just as he was about to step forward and confront the slavers, a door at the far end of the hall burst open. A group of armed men stormed in, led by a hulking brute with mottled green skin and a cybernetic eye. The slaver sneered at Grayson, his lip curling with disdain. "Well, what do we have here?" he drawled, his voice dripping with malice. "An old man who's lost his way? You've stumbled into the wrong place, Gramps. This is a private establishment, and you're trespassing." Grayson stood his ground, meeting the slaver's gaze with a steely one of his own. "I'm no trespasser," he said evenly. "I picked up a distress signal from the station. Thought someone might need help. But it seems the only ones in distress here are these poor girls you've got chained up like animals." The slaver barked out a harsh laugh. "Distress signal? Must have been a glitch in the system. As for the girls, they're not in distress. They're just waiting for their new owners to come and collect them. It's all perfectly legal, I assure you." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "Legal? Slavery is illegal in every civilized corner of the galaxy. What you're doing here is monstrous." The slaver's cybernetic eye glinted with malice. "Monstrous? No. What's monstrous is letting such prime specimens go to waste. These girls are a commodity, old man, and a valuable one at that. So here's the deal. You've got two choices. Either pay up for a chance to sample the merchandise yourself, or get the hell off my station. What's it gonna be?" Grayson's heart raced as he stared down the slaver, his mind spinning with the weight of the choice before him. He was just one man, outnumbered and outgunned. He knew he couldn't take on the slavers alone, but he also knew he couldn't just walk away and leave these girls to their fate. His gaze drifted back to the two silver-haired beauties, their amber eyes wide and pleading. In that moment, Grayson knew what he had to do. It was reckless, foolish even, but it was the only choice he could live with. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. It contained the access codes to his retirement fund, every credit he'd saved over a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice. With a heavy heart, he tossed the chip at the slaver's feet. "I'll take them," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside him. "All of them! I'm buying their freedom!" The slaver's eyes widened with shock and disbelief. "All of them? Are you crazy, old man? Do you have any idea how much that would cost?" Grayson met the slaver's gaze unflinchingly. "I have enough, and I'm willing to pay whatever it takes to get these girls out of here into safety." The slaver hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. "Your funeral, old-timer, but I ain't complaining. More credits for me." He scooped up the data chip and plugged it into a handheld scanner, his eyes bulging as the amount flashed on the screen. "Damn, you weren't kidding," he muttered, pocketing the chip with a greedy grin. "All right, the girls are all l'entouilleur. But remember, once you leave this station, they're your responsibility. No refunds, no returns." Grayson nodded curtly, his heart swelling with a mix of relief and trepidation as he watched the slaver unlock the girls' shackles and usher them toward him. They huddled together, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. Grayson held out his hands in a gesture of peace, his voice gentle. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe now. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." The girls exchanged wary glances, but something in Grayson's eyes must have reassured them. They stepped forward tentatively, allowing him to guide them out of the hall and back toward the docking bay. As they walked, Grayson's mind raced with the implications of what he'd just done. He'd given up his entire life savings, his dream of a peaceful retirement, to save dozens of girls he'd never met before. It was impulsive, irrational even, but somehow it felt like the most important thing he'd ever done. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The girls were traumatized, broken. They'd need time to heal, to learn to trust again. And Grayson was hardly equipped to be a caretaker, let alone a father figure to so many. But he was determined to do right by them, to give them a chance at a better life. As they boarded the Celestial Nomad, the girls filling every available space in the small ship, Grayson felt a strange sense of purpose settle over him. His old life was gone, but a new one was just beginning. And somehow he knew it would be the most important adventure of all. With a deep breath, he fired up the engines and blasted off into the stars, leaving the nightmarish slave station behind. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would protect these girls with every fiber of his being, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The Celestial Nomad hummed with a newfound energy as it streaked through the star-studded expanse of space, its cramped confines now filled with the soft murmurs and tentative movements of its unexpected passengers. Grayson sat at the helm, his brow furrowed in concentration as he plotted a course to the safest, most secluded location he could think of, a small, uncharted planet on the fringes of the Orion Nebula. He glanced over his shoulder at the huddled mass of girls, his heart clenching with a mixture of compassion and uncertainty. They looked so lost, so vulnerable, their exotic beauty marred by the shadows of fear and trauma in their eyes. Grayson knew he had his work cut out for him, trying to earn their trust and help them heal from the unspeakable horrors they'd endured. As if sensing his gaze, two of the girls looked up, the same silver-haired, amber-eyed beauties who had first caught his eye back on the slave station. They met his eyes for a brief moment before looking away, their delicate features etched with a wariness that made Grayson's heart ache. He turned back to the controls, his mind racing with the practicalities of the situation. The celestial nomad was never meant to hold so many passengers, and supplies were already running low. He'd need to find a way to feed and shelter the girls, to keep them safe from the myriad dangers of the galaxy. Lost in thought, Grayson almost didn't notice the soft footsteps approaching the cockpit. He turned to see the two silver-haired girls standing hesitantly in the doorway, their slender forms wrapped in the spare blankets he'd managed to scrounge up. "Captain," one of them said softly, her voice a melodic lilt that sent a shiver down Grayson's spine. We wanted to thank you for saving us. We know you gave up everything to buy our freedom, and we don't know how we can ever repay you." Grayson felt a lump form in his throat, his chest tightening with emotion. "You don't owe me anything," he said gruffly, trying to keep his voice steady. "No one deserves to be treated like property, like merchandise. I just did what any decent person would do." The girls exchanged a glance, something unspoken passing between them. "Still," the other girl said, her amber eyes shimmering with unshed tears, "what you did, it means everything to us, to all of us. We were so scared, so hopeless. But you gave us a chance at a new life, a future. We'll never forget that." Grayson swallowed hard, his eyes stinging with the weight of their gratitude. What are your names?" he asked softly, realizing with a pang of guilt that he hadn't even thought to ask before. The first girl smiled, a tentative curve of her lips that made her ethereal features even more breathtaking. "I'm Tanara," she said softly, "and this is my sister, Avira. We're from a planet called Lumina in the Andromeda Galaxy." Grayson's eyes widened in surprise. Lumina was a legend among spacers, a mythical world said to be home to a race of bioluminescent beings with unparalleled beauty and grace. He'd always assumed it was just a story, a tall tale passed around by lonely freighter pilots on long hauls. "Lumina," he breathed, shaking his head in wonder. I thought it was just a myth." Avira's smile turned sad, her amber eyes darkening with memory. "It was real," she said softly. "Before the raiders came, they destroyed everything, took us as slaves. We're the last of our kind now." Grayson's heart clenched with sympathy, a fierce protectiveness welling up inside him. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I can't even imagine what you've been through. But I promise, I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, to help you start a new life. You're not alone anymore." Tainara and Avira exchanged another glance, something warm and hopeful flickering in their eyes. "Thank you, Captain," Tainara said softly, reaching out to touch Grayson's hand in a gesture of gratitude. We trust you." Grayson felt a spark of electricity at the contact, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the ship's climate controls. He cleared his throat, trying to ignore the sudden racing of his heart. "Please, call me Grayson," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "And I promise I won't let you down." The girl smiled, a real smile this time, and Grayson felt something shift inside him, a sense of purpose and connection he'd never experienced before. He knew in that moment that his life had irrevocably changed, that these girls had become more important to him than anything else in the galaxy. As Tanara and Avira returned to the main hold, Grayson turned back to the controls, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. He had a lot of work ahead of him, finding a safe haven, building a new life, helping the girls heal from their trauma. But for the first time in years, he felt a sense of excitement, of hope for the future. He punched in the coordinates for the Orion Nebula, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. It was time to start a new adventure, one that promised to be the most rewarding of his life. As the celestial nomads streaked through the stars, Grayson couldn't help but steal glances at Tanara and Avira, their ethereal beauty and gentle strength tugging at something deep inside him. He knew it was foolish, inappropriate even, to feel such a connection to girls so young and vulnerable. But there was something about them, a sense of kinship and understanding that transcended the boundaries of age and species. Shaking his head, Grayson forced himself to focus on the task at hand. He had a responsibility to all the girls now, to keep them safe and help them build a new life. He couldn't afford to be distracted by impossible dreams and forbidden desires. But as the ship hurtled through the void of space, Grayson couldn't quite shake the feeling that his destiny was somehow intertwined with Tanara and Avira's, that the three of them were meant to face the challenges ahead together. It was a thought both terrifying and exhilarating, a promise of adventure and purpose that made Grayson's heart race with anticipation. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. With Tanara and Avira by his side, he was ready to face anything the galaxy could throw at him. As the celestial nomad approached the lush, verdant planet on the fringes of the Orion Nebula, Grayson felt a sense of peace wash over him. The planet was perfect, remote, untouched by civilization, with a warm climate and abundant resources. It was the ideal place to start a new life, to create a sanctuary for the girls to heal and thrive. Grayson guided the ship to a gentle landing in a clearing near a crystal-clear lake, the soft hum of the engines fading into silence. He took a deep breath, savoring the sweet, fragrant air that filtered through the ship's ventilation system. He turned to face the girls, a smile tugging at his lips. "Welcome home," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "This is where we'll start over, where we'll build a new life together." The girls exchanged glances, their eyes shining with a mix of hope and trepidation. Tanara stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch Grayson's arm. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. "For everything. We never dreamed we could have a home again. A place to belong." Grayson's heart swelled with emotion, his throat tightening with the weight of her words. "You do belong," he said fiercely, his gaze encompassing all the girls. "You belong here, with each other, with me. I know I'm just an old spacer, but I promise I'll do everything in my power to give you the life you deserve." Avira stepped forward, her amber eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You're not just an old spacer," she said softly, her melodic voice sending shivers down Grayson's spine. "You're our savior, our hero. We'd follow you anywhere, Grayson." Grayson swallowed hard, his heart pounding with the intensity of her gaze. He knew he should resist, should maintain a proper distance. But looking into Avira's eyes, he felt a connection that transcended reason, a pull that was both terrifying and exhilarating. He cleared his throat, forcing himself to look away. "Right," he said gruffly, trying to regain his composure. "Let's get started, shall we? We have a lot of work to do." Over the next few weeks, Grayson and the girls worked tirelessly to build their new home on the lush, verdant planet they had claimed as their own. The days were long and the work was hard, but there was a sense of purpose and camaraderie that made even the most challenging tasks feel worthwhile. Grayson took the lead, his years of experience as a spacer giving him a wealth of knowledge about survival and self-sufficiency. He taught the girls how to forage for edible plants, how to construct simple but sturdy shelters from the abundant wood and stone, and how to navigate by the stars in case they ever got lost. Tanara and Avira proved to be quick learners, their natural intelligence and adaptability shining through as they mastered new skills with ease. They worked alongside Grayson with a fierce determination, their delicate features set in lines of concentration as they wove intricate baskets from the supple vines that grew near the lake, or shaped clay pots to store their harvested fruits and nuts. As the days turned into weeks, their little settlement began to take shape. A cluster of small, thatched huts nestled in a clearing near the lake, surrounded by gardens of exotic fruits and vegetables that Tanara and Avira had carefully cultivated. A larger central structure served as a gathering place and storehouse, its walls lined with the tools and supplies they had salvaged from the celestial nomad. But it wasn't just the physical labor that brought them closer together. In the evenings after the work was done, they would gather around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter under the star-strewn sky. Grayson found himself opening up to Tanara and Avira in ways he never had before, sharing tales of his own adventures and heartaches. He told them about his childhood on a poverty-stricken colony world, about the way he had stowed away on a freighter at the age of 15 to escape a life of hunger and desperation. He spoke of the years he had spent as a lone wolf, taking odd jobs and living hand-to-mouth on the fringes of society, until he had finally saved up enough to buy the celestial nomad and strike out on his own. Tanara and Avira listened with rapt attention, their eyes shining with empathy and understanding. They shared their own stories too, of their life on Lumina, of the beauty and wonder of their lost world. They spoke of the great crystalline cities that had once sparkled under the twin suns, of the lush, bioluminescent forests that had glowed with an ethereal beauty in the night. They also shared the pain of their capture, of the terror and despair they had felt as they were ripped away from everything they had ever known and thrust into a nightmare of slavery and abuse. Grayson's heart ached for them, a fierce protectiveness welling up inside him as he listened to their stories. As the weeks turned into months, Grayson couldn't help but be in awe of Tanara and Avira's resilience and strength. Despite the unimaginable trauma they had endured, they faced each day with a quiet grace and determination that took his breath away. They were no longer the frightened, broken girls he had rescued from the slave station, but strong, capable women with a beauty that went beyond the physical. Grayson found himself constantly drawn to them, his eyes seeking out their slender, graceful forms as they went about their daily tasks. He marveled at the way the sunlight played across their silver hair, at the way their amber eyes sparkled with warmth and intelligence. He felt a deep sense of connection to them, a bond that went beyond mere friendship or gratitude. At first, he tried to resist the growing attraction he felt, telling himself that it was inappropriate, that he was too old and jaded for such youthful, innocent creatures. But as the days turned into weeks, he found it harder and harder to deny the longing that ached in his heart. He began to notice the way Tanara's gaze would linger on him when she thought he wasn't looking, the way Avira's hand would brush against his as they worked side by side in the gardens. He felt a spark of electricity every time they touched, a warmth that spread through his chest and made his pulse race. Still, he held back, unwilling to cross that final line, to risk shattering the fragile trust and friendship they had built. He was content to simply be near them, to bask in the glow of their presence and the joy of their laughter. But one evening, as they sat around the campfire, Tanara turned to him with a soft, hesitant smile. "Grayson," she said softly, her melodic voice sending shivers down his spine. "There's something we need to tell you." Grayson's heart pounded with sudden anticipation, his throat going dry as he met her luminous gaze. "What is it?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Avira reached out, her slender fingers intertwining with Tanara's in a gesture of unity and support. We love you," she said simply, her amber eyes shining with a depth of emotion that took Grayson's breath away. "Not just as our savior or our friend, but as a man." Grayson felt a rush of joy and disbelief, his heart soaring with a hope he had never dared to acknowledge. He searched their faces, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation, but all he saw was a pure, unwavering love that matched the intensity of his own feelings. I love you too," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Both of you. I never dreamed I could feel this way again, but you've given me a reason to live, a purpose beyond mere survival. You've given me everything." Tanara and Avira's faces lit up with a radiant joy, their eyes sparkling with happy tears. They surged forward as one, their slender arms wrapping around Grayson in a tight, fierce embrace. He held them close, marveling at the way their soft, warm bodies molded perfectly to his, at the way their hearts beat in sync with his own. As they clung to each other under the starlit sky, Grayson felt a sense of rightness and belonging that he had never known before. All his life, he had been searching for something, a piece of himself that had always been missing. But now, with Tanara and Avira in his arms, he knew that he had finally found it. They stayed like that for a long time, simply holding each other and savoring the warmth and closeness of their bodies. When they finally pulled back, Grayson cupped their faces in his hands, his thumbs gently stroking the soft, glowing skin of their cheeks. "I know it won't be easy," he said softly, his eyes searching theirs. "We come from different worlds, different cultures. There will be challenges, obstacles we'll have to overcome. But I promise you, I will love you and cherish you for as long as I live. You are my heart, my home, my everything." Tanara and Avira's eyes shone with a fierce, unwavering love, their smiles brighter than the stars above. "We know," Tanara whispered, her hand coming up to cover Grayson's. "But together we can face anything. We are stronger than we ever knew, because we have each other." Avira nodded, her silver hair gleaming in the firelight. "You are our heart too," she said softly, her melodic voice filled with emotion. "Our love, our future. We will build a life together, a family that nothing can tear apart." Grayson felt a surge of emotion, a joy and gratitude that brought tears to his eyes. He gathered them close once more, his lips finding theirs in a sweet, passionate kiss that sealed their love and their commitment to each other. As they lost themselves in the warmth and tenderness of their embrace, Grayson knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. There would be challenges and obstacles ahead, moments of doubt and fear. But with Tanara and Avira by his side, he knew that they could overcome anything, that their love would be a light that guided them through even the darkest of times. And so, under the endless expanse of the star-strewn sky, Grayson, Tanara, and Avira pledged their hearts and their lives to each other, a bond that would endure across the vast reaches of space and time. They were a family now, bound by a love that transcended the boundaries of species and culture, a love that would be remembered and celebrated for generations to come. In the months that followed their heartfelt declaration of love under the starlit sky, Grayson, Avira, and Tanara only grew closer, their bond deepening with each passing day. They worked side by side to make their sanctuary a true home, laughter and lingering glances mingling with the satisfaction of a hard day's work. Grayson found himself constantly in awe of the sisters' strength and resilience, their ability to find joy and wonder in even the simplest things. Avira's quick wit and mischievous smile never failed to make his heart skip a beat, while Tanara's gentle wisdom and quiet grace brought a sense of peace he had never known. As for Avira and Tanara, they marveled at the depth of Grayson's compassion, the fierce protectiveness that had driven him to sacrifice everything for their sake. In his arms, they found not just safety and comfort, but a sense of belonging they had never dared to dream of. And so, as the seasons turned and their love only grew stronger, it seemed only natural that they should make their union official. One warm summer evening, as they sat by the lakeshore watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Grayson turned to Avira and Tanara with a nervous smile. "I know I'm just a battered old spacer," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "and I know our love is unconventional by most folks' standards. But I can't imagine my life without you two in it. Avira, Tanara, will you marry me? Will you be my wives, my partners in all things?" Avira and Tanara exchanged a glance, their eyes sparkling with joy and unshed tears. "Oh, Grayson," Avira breathed, throwing her arms around his neck. "We thought you'd never ask." Tanara joined in the embrace, her smile brighter than the rising moon. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with happiness. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. We love you, Grayson, more than words can say." The wedding was a simple affair, just the three of them exchanging vows by the lakeshore as the gentle breeze carried their words out across the water. Avira and Tanara wore crowns of wildflowers in their silver hair, their amber eyes glowing with joy, while Grayson stood tall and proud in his best shirt and trousers. As they sealed their union with a deep, passionate kiss, Grayson felt a sense of rightness settle over him, a feeling of coming home at last. He knew their love would not always be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles to face in the years ahead. But with Avira and Tanara by his side, he felt capable of weathering any storm. Later that night, as they lay tangled together in the warm nest of their bed, Grayson marveled at the miracle of their love. Avira's playful kisses and Tanara's tender caresses ignited a fire in his blood, a passion he had thought long extinguished. They explored each other with reverent hands and worshipful lips, discovering all the secret places that made them gasp and moan with pleasure. Avira's silvery skin glowed in the candlelight as Grayson trailed kisses down the elegant column of her throat, while Tanara's breathy sighs urged him on as his work-roughened hands mapped the silken curves of her body. And when at last they joined as one, their bodies moving together in a dance as old as time itself, Grayson knew he had found paradise. The heat of their passion burned away the last of his doubts and fears, leaving only the shining certainty of their love. In the afterglow, sated and spent, they held each other close, trading soft kisses and whispered words of devotion. Grayson gathered his wives into his arms, marveling at the strange and wonderful twists of fate that had brought them together. He knew there would be challenges ahead, building a life together on this wild, untamed world, learning to navigate the uncharted waters of their unique bond. But with Avira and Tanara by his side, he felt capable of anything. As he drifted off to sleep, lulled by the soft rhythm of their breathing, Grayson sent a silent prayer of thanks to the universe for the precious gift of their love. Whatever the future held, he knew he would cherish every moment with his beautiful wives, his heart, his home, his everything. And so began the next chapter of their story, a tale of love and laughter, of passion and partnership, of three souls who had found each other against all odds, and in doing so had created something rare and wonderful. A love to last a lifetime and beyond.